Thank you all for coming today and taking time out of your day, out of your week to come and talk broadband with us. For many of you, this is day 2 of a 2-day conference. For some of you, this is the first day. We had some great conversations yesterday. I think there was a lot of shared learning that was happening yesterday, people sharing what was happening and successful in one community, and other communities were learning from it. We had great engagement from our internet service providers in the state and great engagement from those who are supporting these communities. It was a great, exciting day. Today will be a little bit different. Today the agenda is jam-packed. We're going to move very quickly through lots of topics. It's going to be a busy day, but we're excited. We're going to try to keep things moving, try to keep things on time. Wanted to make sure that we thanked our sponsors. They're in the program, or you'll see them up on the slides. Some of them are in the back of the room. A huge thank you to our sponsors. Also a huge thank you to the Broadband team at the Island Institute and the events team at the Island Institute. This conference wouldn't have been possible without all of their support and work in pulling this day together. One of the many themes that we'll be seeing today, and probably the most important theme, is that we need to be working together on broadband. We're talking about many different forms of public-private partnerships or collaborations. Those are messy, those are tricky, they are difficult things to pull off well, and they take a lot of work. There are some really good benefits to those public-private partnerships as well. And so we're going to dig into that a little bit today. We're going to dig into how we can work together. So with that, come back and do a brief overview of the current state of broadband and an update since we last met. But before we get to that, I wanted to introduce Lori LaChance, who's the president of Thomas College, and just wanted to say that Thomas College has been a great friend to the Island Institute, and more importantly to Maine's island communities. Many island students come here, whether they're regular students or they're non-traditional learners who are seeking a credential of value or otherwise to further their education. Thomas College is a great great institution to have in the state. So welcome, Lori. Come on up.
Well, thank you, Nick. What a wonderful, wonderful chance to see you all here. And I'm sorry I wasn't here to welcome you yesterday, so I'm a little day late, but I wasn't in yesterday. But I just want to thank you all for choosing Thomas College to come and to congregate. I hope you enjoy this space. For me, over my lifetime in Maine, have spoken in all kinds of venues. And to be in a place that has all this natural light, I hope you're enjoying that and feeling the spirit of this place. For those of you who don't know much about Thomas, we're 125 years old. We started over at 5 and Dime down on Main Street in Waterville as a business training school. So business is our roots. We had that for our first century. And then the last 25 years have been explosive in the amount of change that's come to this institution. Thomas is a very, very special place, in my estimation. I know I'm a little biased for sure. But it's a place that I describe as a place of hope and opportunity. About 75% of our students come from Maine, and about 80% stay and work in Maine after they graduate with their education. But more importantly, fully 2/3 of our students are the first in their family to go to college. That's what makes the mission of this place so very central and probably aligned with much of what you see, with many of you representing rural communities. I grew up in Dover-Foxcroft. My hometown is so important to me. And the work that you're doing to try to give a leg up to those rural areas competing in a crazy new world, I really want to thank you for that work. It's really important. In the summer, I try to be back in my hometown every weekend, as often as we can get there, because that's where I find my peace. And there's no question that there's so much opportunity in every little village in Maine, and we just need to seize that opportunity. For those of you who may not know of my background, I kind of magically became a college president 7 years ago, and I have really no idea how it happened, because prior to that, my first 29 years was serving as an economist in various roles. So 10 years as Central Maine Power Company's corporate economist, and then 11 years as the state economist at the state planning office, and it's so good to see old friends from that period of my life. It was just wonderful. And then 8 years at Maine Development Foundation, and then somehow ended up here, which has been just a joy to my heart. Because for 29 years, I worked with many of the people in this room trying to figure out how we help this state that we love to grow. And we've looked at every form of economic development, everything, broadband included, but oh my goodness, so many east-west highway studies and early childhood and attracting retirees and port investments and train investments and tax policy. Oh my goodness, I've studied every form of tax policy, and we've tried so many things. A few years ago, when I was at the Development Foundations and the Brookings Institution was doing some research, I got hired to study the 35 years of economic development in Maine and do the history of it. Well, it took a few years off my life doing it, but it was fascinating because Maine has been an innovator for years. Just an innovator. But the things that help us to grow as our state, our greatest attributes, are often the very things that hold us back. So we're fair. We're fair to people. So we take our limited resources and we spread them out so everybody gets a little, instead of focusing and investing on the thing that will move the state forward. We're frugal, so we put in place authorities and like the Technology Institute and all kinds of things, and then we don't fully fund it so it can run optimally. So we're frugal to a fault. We're humble to a fault. We don't tell the world enough what a great place this is. And so I think collectively, we use our strengths that make Maine, Maine, and then we need to learn to grow with those very same strengths and not limit ourselves by those in any way, shape, or form. And broadband is one of those very important things we need to focus on. In fact, as you reflect on Maine's economy, a couple centuries ago, 80% of all people worked in agriculture and natural resources, 80% of our economy. By the early to mid-1900s, as late as 1940, 1945, 1 out of every 2 jobs in Maine was in manufacturing. And then we went through another major transition to what was then referred to as the service economy. And now here we go, transitioning into a very rapidly evolving, global, knowledge-based, technology-driven economy. And that's where the work in this room takes place and why it has become so important. Michael Porter wrote this big report, an analysis. He studied nations around the globe. It's called The Competitive Advantage of Nations. And the book's like that thick, and I could not read anything that thick. I'd still be reading years later. But I watched the videos on it. And the point, if I could boil that book down to a single sentiment, Michael Porter suggested that as you study all the economies of the world, it really doesn't have to do with their form of government. It doesn't have to do with their geography or their natural resources. What it has to do with is their capacity for innovation. Well, capacity for innovation means we have to educate our people. We have to empower them with innovative opportunities and options. And then we have to give them technology that they can use to absolutely grow, survive, and thrive in this new world order. So all that being said, It points to the importance of the work you're doing and the importance of the work we're doing, us and other higher eds. As you look at Making Maine Work report, Dana Connors and I had kind of started that in 2010 was the first version of that, and then 2018 we did a second version, and you'll be happy to know broadband's front and center, and in fact has grown in importance over the years. The number one issue facing Maine's growth is the cost of health insurance. Okay, we probably can't do a lot about that, but the number two greatest opportunity for Maine is to grow the availability of professional workers, and the number three is high-speed internet access. Those things together, if we can collectively bring every person in Maine to their greatest educational potential and empower them with systems that allow them to utilize technology to plug into this global economy, the sky is the limit for Maine, and anything is possible. So, as a rural Maine girl, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Welcome to Thomas. Please feel free to explore. I talked to many of you this morning, and the first thing you said was the first thing I always hear. People come on campus, and they're like, wow, this is beautiful. We didn't know you existed. Your students, they look you in the eye. They say hello. They open the door for you. They don't just ignore you. This is such a special place. Well, I'm in an industry where the national pundits say 1 out of every 4 colleges will disappear in the next 10 years. And my goal is very simple, not to be one of those. So when I hear people say, I didn't know you existed, that is not a strategy for survival of this college. So I do hope, if you enjoy your stay, you will welcome others to come and check out Thomas. I do hope you'll come back again. Feel free to have your conferences here. It's really wonderful to have you here, and I so appreciate all that you're doing. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Thomas College, for your hospitality. It's wonderful to be here. Hi, friends. Hi. Good morning. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Andrew Butcher. I work with Fourth Economy Consulting, and I'm very proud to serve as the embedded capacity for the Maine Broadband Coalition, which means that I've been helping organize and helping work on some organizational development updates for the coalition since June, and helping support some of the planning for this summit. So welcome to day 2 of the 2019 Maine Broadband Summit. Day 2. How many folks were here yesterday? Yes, that is a lot of hands. Fantastic. So day 2 is an important opportunity for the local community leaders that were here to be joined by state and regional representatives to help connect communities with local and regional and statewide practical resources and tools for addressing your broadband goals. So day 2 is a bigger lens. We're going to be drilling into statewide policy. We're going to be drilling into statewide opportunities. And we're going to be hearing from some distinct voices. And as Nick said, we're going to be going a little bit faster. And so with that, I want to make sure that I highlight Happy National Internet Day. Really kudos to the Island Institute team for planning this so astutely. So we do have a pretty full morning, so I'm going to go through a couple quick things. But it's important to give a snapshot as to the update with the Maine Broadband Coalition. How many folks are already members of the new website and have registered as new members of the new website? Okay, a smattering. Good reminder that that's a good opportunity to see what's going on with the Broadband Coalition. For those of you that have been pretty actively a part of it, you know that for the last 8 years, the coalition has been a network that has shared and increased knowledge and served as an informal network to advance policy and best practices in the state. Much of the work has been stewarded through a steering committee of geographic diversity and substantive expertise. So this year, a leadership transition combined with support from the Maine Community Foundation allowed for the group to evaluate an appropriate course of evolution, resulting in contracting me and Fourth Economy to facilitate an organizational development and strategic planning process. So that process has yielded an organizational structure that can grow and adapt. It's a network, there's a network agreement that codifies how decisions can get made and provides structure for multiple tiers of engagement. There are opportunities between signing up on the website and committing to a weekly phone call to talk about policy. You don't have to do the full heavy lift, and you can be as engaged as you need and want to be. There still remains general membership, which is similar, but with a more specific opportunity to participate both in person and digitally. An advisory committee to explicitly develop, inform, and guide strategy, and a governance committee to steward the organizational development needs. So there's really now 3 tiers of engagement with the Broadband Coalition. If you, or someone you might know, is interested in participating in the advisory committee, which involves approximately a quarterly conversation and/or convening and participating in occasional calls, there are a handful of signups both at the front desk and next to the Island Institute team, and you can do so on the Maine Broadband Coalition website. So with that, I just want to give my thanks to the current advisory committee of the Broadband Coalition for all that you do to advance broadband throughout the state, and hand back to Nick to walk through the rest of the morning. Thanks so much.
All right, here we go. So, first up is a new friend, Bill Coleman. He's from Minnesota. We brought him out here as part of some funding we have from the John and Tina Gillis family. They wanted to make sure that Mainers could benefit from high-quality speakers at conferences and events like this. And so with some of their funding, we were able to bring Bill out to speak to us. Bill works on economic development, broadband for economic development in Minnesota with Minnesota communities. Those of you who were here yesterday maybe had the benefit of talking to him and hearing a little bit about what they do. I will turn it over to Bill now.
Thank you.
Today.
Good morning. Broadband infrastructure is kind of like an exercise bicycle. You got to spend some money to get that, but that's pretty easy to do. The real value, though, from broadband is getting on that exercise bicycle and making use of it. And so we do a lot of that work in Minnesota. Let me see if I can figure this thing out. There we go. Nope, I'll just push from here maybe. So I'm lucky enough to work on behalf of the Blandin Foundation. I like that embedded capacity phrase I've heard a few times with the Broadband Coalition. That sounds pretty cool. So I'm the embedded capacity for the Blandin Foundation. And the foundation is located in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and is been working on rural broadband for over 15 years. We just had our 15th annual conference in Minnesota on broadband. And they've really been the voice for advocating, for pushing the state of Minnesota, for organizing regional actors and community folks around broadband. That's been a real pleasure for me to participate with them. And people say, well, you're from Minnesota, what's that got to do with Maine? And we have a lot of similarities. You can see some of these. A lot of them have to do with ice and rocks. We have rocky shorelines. We've got the coast of Lake Superior, which looks very Maine-like. We've got a lot of woods and lakes and so on. Lots of tourists and Canadians, a lot of hockey. And so, but we've also got rural broadband issues. We've got a lot of area, a lot of trees, and not many people in some of those places. We have a lot of small communities, under 1,000 population. And so it's, I think we do have a lot in common. Minnesota's an interesting place. So talking last night about, we've been pretty successful. Our economy is pretty good. And what makes that happen? We have 17 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and with the largest privately held company in Cargill and the largest cooperative in CHS Cooperative. So, but Minnesota is a state that has the North Woods. We've got the big woods, deciduous woods coming out of the Midwest. We've got the Great Plains starting in western Minnesota. And we're the only state where water flows in 3 directions. So north to Hudson Bay, east out through the St. Lawrence River, and south to the Gulf of Mexico. So I think that fact that we're at a meeting place of the ecosystems and of transportation has really helped drive our economy. The Blandin Foundation is a unique rural philanthropy formed with the proceeds of a sale of a paper mill. And so we certainly, you can relate to that. It was a family-owned company. Now it's owned by a Finnish conglomerate. Local control switches to international marketplace. A lot of change, but the proceeds that went to the foundation have really helped set a course for leadership by the foundation. As I mentioned, we've been working for 15 years, and we just had a big celebration at our conference. And I like the spirit of this conference because I think there's a lot of celebration going on here as well. With yesterday, they had the community-led sessions, discussion sessions, that I think were a great way to celebrate the success and the champions you have in your communities. Leadership, you have to do it yourself, but you can't do it alone. That's one of the things that the foundation really promotes. Jerry Garcia says it differently from the Grateful Dead. He says, isn't it a shame that there's so much work to do and we're the ones that have to do it? And I think that's the case. No one else is going to solve your broadband problems in rural Maine or Minnesota or anywhere in the United States. And so it's up to community leaders. We met some great leaders yesterday, whether they're folks in a small community or people on an island. It was great to see that. This is a leadership team from Hibbing, Minnesota, which is a mining town, iron ore mining town, working to diversify their economy. They love the mining, but man, they know they need something else besides mining to be successful as a community. Luckily, they have a nice college in their community as well, and so we're there. President of the college is front and center, and that's really important to have the institutional support, whether it's a college, a foundation, the Island Institute. Those are key folks that can really help make things happen. But what guides our work at the Blandin Foundation? Primarily it's this: encouraging better broadband networks while increasing human capacity to maximize use. The building the networks part is relatively easy because that's just about money, just writing checks. Changing human behavior to get them to adopt new technologies, that's a whole different kind of thing. That takes ongoing assistance and encouragement, recognition, and maybe a little fear sometimes as well to help motivate that change. And so, but these are simultaneous activities. In Bemidji, Minnesota, they're lucky enough to have a great rural telephone cooperative, and they have fiber to the home now across 5,000 square miles of north central Minnesota. It's an amazing story. At the same time, they've got a little meat market in their community, Steichen Meats. This guy just does social media with his phone. 80,000 Facebook followers on a neighborhood meat market. So the connectivity is great to have gigabit level service. They have that for $70 a month. 1 gig, symmetrical, no data caps. Here's a guy running his meat market on his phone. So the network is important and connectivity is important, wired and wireless. But you can't let people use the excuse that the network isn't good enough for me to be moving forward on technology. Some places, if you're out on the island, there's no internet. That is a difficult kind of situation. I recognize, I hear the stories every day about people, how they organize their lives around when they can get online and who in the family can be online at particular times. I'm sure you have those stories as well. But we want to focus on both at network and use. One of the things that Minnesota has a lot of Finns, and Finland has declared broadband a human right. It's a policy statement by their government that holds them up to a certain standard that they're going to solve that issue. They're going to address that issue. And so we definitely believe that access denied is opportunity denied. In the Michigan school network has just finished a study. They haven't published it yet, but they've shared some of their results. Students without broadband connections at home, lower grades, less likely to study STEM topics, less likely to plan to go to college. So that when somebody's 13, 14 years old and they already have that mindset being formed, that is a critical human right. It's also everything's better with broadband. We know that healthcare, education, commerce, all require broadband to reach the fullest capacity. So we know that that's a critical piece for folks. Some people, mostly urban dwellers, say, well, these small towns are kind of all alike. We all know that every small town is different, and that has a different cast of characters in terms of leadership, in terms of provider options, who owns the telephone poles. So we say when you've seen one rural community, you've seen one rural community. And so I encourage you to have a flexible approach for your own community. We've heard a lot yesterday about some process, that can, we should figure out this process that everyone can get on board with. I think every community does have to find their own unique path. And there are definitely some learnings to go along that, but rely on your own strengths. I think I heard that already this morning. We try and meet communities where they're at. So whether they've just decided to think about broadband, if somebody's been to a conference like this, or a community that's been working on broadband for a while, we tailor our services to those communities to fit their needs. But know that access and use are required for the full value of that connectivity. And we're investing a lot of money in broadband. And so we need to get that return on investment. You really need to think about how can we maximize the use of this investment. This is a little broadband development process. The idea of waking up, coming to a conference and realize that broadband is a critical asset. I think we are now seeing the differentiation of communities that are well connected and aren't, in terms of their ability to attract people, attract businesses, attract investment. So it's important that leaders do wake up to this. But then these discussions about what are the options, what do we need, what are our goals? I think we heard yesterday about the vision that some communities have that have driven their whole process. Broadband everywhere, affordability, let's do it together kind of thing. And then gathering that data, the studies that Island Institute helps to fund. I'd like to see some of these studies. I hear they're in the range of around $10,000 with the studies that we fund. We're paying a lot more for that, so it'd be interesting to see what you guys are doing there and do some comparisons. But then also then make decisions about improving broadband networks and improving user sophistication. We all have our own level of digital capacity, and some people are really smart users. I'm great with my computer until it doesn't work, right? And then, well, what, But as long as it works, I'm great with it. Other people are really sophisticated in fiber but don't know much about wireless. And so, but increasing that user sophistication is really critical. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we do some of that. But Blandin Foundation, we feel that we're a big advocacy group, and you can see some of the things that we do in terms of conferences, reports, and so on. Bernadine Jocelyn, who's really the brains behind Blandin Foundation's Broadband initiative. I'm kind of the road warrior, but she sets the vision. She's been a member of the state's broadband task force set up by the governor, and at times a fierce advocate, her against a team of about 8 different providers on the task force representing that community voice. And we do believe that the community should be the one that decides what's good enough for the community. It shouldn't be a provider from some other place that's making that choice. This is our state vision, and we created that at a conference like this. Everyone in Minnesota will be able to use convenient, affordable broadband that allows us to survive and thrive. These are our programs. Blandin sends me out to any community that wants me up to 32 hours of assistance to get started on broadband. And you can kind of see the kind of activities that we do, surveys and meetings with providers, just leadership education. We also do the feasibility studies, up to $25,000 grants, one-to-one cash match. And those have been key to tapping into our state's rural broadband fund. We've now got $20 million to spend this year. There's $70 million worth of requests for that $20 million, so there'll be lots of demand for that. Our Broadband Communities program is really a full suite of activities where we provide the community with up to $100,000 for broadband access and use kind of projects. And we do a lot of coaching with that, leadership development, help them set up projects and so on. Communities send, they send people. That's what we require for them. People are ready to work. We use the Intelligent Community Framework, and I encourage you to go to intelligentcommunity.org to take a look at that. I'm way behind on my schedule already, so just take a look at that. A lot of the things people have talked about in terms of elements for the college. Intelligentcommunity.org. So we go through this big process, 18 to 24 months with the communities to help them decide what to do and how to do it. The success factors, we like that framework. We're quick to action from first convening to projects in about 120 days. The fact that the foundation has given the communities money to spend is great. It's fun to brainstorm. Have money to implement is even better. And you can see the cross-sector collaboration is great. We have all kinds of projects all across that intelligent community framework, access, training, marketing, things with digital inclusion, business advocacy and training, been very successful there. The broad community engagement leads to powerful community impact. We really engage the entire community, get as many people in the room as we can. So Blandin Foundation has a great blog. It's Blandin on Broadband. It's a lot of state of Minnesota stuff, but national, international as well, and lots of things at our website, broadband.blandinfoundation.org. Thank you very much.